There is a decision every person comes to at some point in their life, and most people do not make it. Not because they cannot, not because they do not understand it, but because it is uncomfortable, because it demands honesty, because it asks them to stop blaming the world and start looking in the mirror. And so they delay it. They tell themselves, I'll think about it later. I'll deal with it when things calm down. When I have more time, when I have more money, when I feel more confident. When, and while they wait, something very subtle happens. Life begins to make the decision for them. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and quietly, without any dramatic collapse, a pattern forms, a routine, a way of living that feels familiar but not fulfilling, comfortable but not proud, busy but not progressing. Most people believe their life is controlled by circumstances, by their job, by their past, by their family, by the economy, by luck. But in truth, life is controlled by the decisions we postpone. Because the decision you avoid does not disappear. It simply becomes your default future. You see, there are two kinds of pain in life. The pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Discipline is heavy for a moment. Regret is heavy for a lifetime. And the mind, if left unmanaged, will always choose the lighter weight today, even if it means carrying a crushing load tomorrow. So the real question is not, what do you want? The real question is, what are you willing to decide and finally commit to, even if it costs you comfort, excuses, and your old identity? The decision most people avoid is not about a job, not about a relationship, not even about money. It is the decision to take full responsibility for the direction of their life, not partial responsibility. Not responsibility when things are going well, but total responsibility even when it is inconvenient to admit. Where I am is, in large part, because of the choices I have repeated. This is a quiet decision, no applause, no ceremony, no announcement on social media, just a private moment of truth, a moment when you stop saying, they did this to me, and begin saying, I allowed this to continue. That is not guilt, that is power. Because the day you accept that your life is shaped by your standards, not your wishes, by your habits, not your hopes, by your daily choices, not your intentions, that is the day the future becomes negotiable again. Until then, you live in reaction mode. Reacting to moods, reacting to people, reacting to bills, reacting to fear, reacting to the past. And a reactive life always feels busy, but it rarely feels purposeful. You wake up tired. Not because the work is heavy, but because the direction is unclear. And deep inside, there is a quiet voice that says, this is not what you are capable of. This is not the standard you once imagined. This is not the life you promised yourself you would build. But that voice is uncomfortable, so most people drown it out with noise, entertainment, distraction, constant motion. Yet the voice never leaves. It waits for the moment you are finally willing to decide, I will no longer live on autopilot. I will no longer let my past, my environment, or my fears write my future. I will choose my standards, my habits, and my direction deliberately. Once you make that decision, truly make it, you begin to notice something unsettling. You realize how much of your life has been governed by avoidance. Avoiding difficult conversation, avoiding disciplined routines, avoiding the work that requires patience, avoiding the identity that demands consistency instead of bursts of effort. Most people do not fail because they aim too high. They fail because they aim vaguely. They say, I want to do better, but they never decide what better means in daily behavior. They say, I want change, but they never decide what must be removed. And so the old patterns remain, the old sleeping hours, old spending habits, the old thinking loops, the old tolerance for mediocrity. A life changes when standards change, not when motivation appears. Motivation is a visitor. Standards are residents. The decision you have been avoiding is the decision to raise your standards and live by them even when no one is watching. Even when progress is slow, even when the old life calls you back with the comfort of familiarity. This is where the inner conflict begins. Your future self is pulling you forward. Your past self is pulling you backward. And your present self is standing in the middle, deciding who will win. Every day, in small ways, that decision is being made. When you choose what is easy over what is necessary, when you trade long-term respect for short-term relief, when you delay what you know must be done, the tragedy is not that people make the wrong choice once in a while. The tragedy is that they make it repeatedly and then call the result life. Here is what few people are ever told. The decision you avoid today becomes the condition you tolerate tomorrow. What you will not confront, you will eventually call normal. What you will not change, you will eventually defend. And what you defend long enough, you will one day protect as your identity. That is how quiet captivity is formed. Not with chains, not with walls, but with small, unchallenged compromises. A little less discipline than you know you need. A little more comfort than you know you should accept. A little more waiting. A little more postponing. A little more someday, and then one day you look up and realize the years have moved faster than your courage. The future you once imagined now feels distant, not because it was impossible, but because it required a decision you kept delaying. You see, clarity is not a gift. It is a choice. Direction is not found. It is decided. And the most dangerous place a human being can live is not in failure. It is an indecision. Because indecision feels safe. It feels reasonable. It feels like you are still keeping your options open. But in truth, indecision is a decision. It is the decision to let time, habits, and circumstances choose for you. And time is not gentle with those who refuse to choose. It moves forward, with or without your permission. So the question becomes very simple and very uncomfortable. If you were forced to decide today, not someday, not when conditions improve, but today, what standard would you raise? What habit would you end? What truth would you finally admit to yourself? Because the life you will be living 5 years from now is already being shaped by the decision you are avoiding this week. Not by the dramatic moments, but by the quiet ones. The moment you choose to get up when it would be easier to stay down. The moment you choose to prepare when it would be easier to drift. The moment you choose discipline when no one is applauding. Great lives are not built by one heroic act. They are built by one courageous decision repeated daily. And that decision is this: I will no longer negotiate with my lower standards. I will no longer postpone the life I know I am capable of. I will decide who I am becoming, and I will live as if that decision matters, because it does. Every morning you wake up, your future is waiting to see what you will decide. And your past is hoping you will decide the same way you always have. One day, far sooner than most people expect, you will look back, not at the noise, not at the distractions, not at the excuses that once sounded so convincing. You will look back at the moments you hesitated, the standards you knew you should raise, the direction you felt called to choose, and the decision you kept postponing. And in that moment, the truth will be very clear. It was never a lack of time. It was never a lack of talent. It was never a lack of opportunity. It was the absence of a single, quiet, firm decision. This is who I am now. This is what I stand for. This is the life I will no longer delay. The day you make that decision, life does not become easier, but it becomes simpler. The noise fades. The excuses lose their power. And your actions begin to align with your future, not your past. Because the most powerful force in a human life is not motivation, not circumstances, not even intelligence. It is identity. And the moment you decide who you are, with clarity, with discipline, with finality, your life begins to move in that direction as if it had been waiting for your permission all along.